You know, you can't lose a friend of about 50 years and not feel bad about it. I mean, there's going to be a lot of us old-timers that are going to miss Derks Field. I know the new place is going to be state-of-the-art, so it'll be a lot better, be a lot more convenient, I'm sure of that. Because in the old days, baseball parks weren't built for convenience, they were built for the ball players. But there'll be a lot of old people come down there, and they'll sit some nights and look up there across that outfield where the moon is coming up over that house in center field like it used to, and where we used to have a rose garden in center field. And they'll say, you know, this is nice, but I wish it was back to the old ballpark. The ballpark was named after John C. Derks, who had been sports editor of the Salt Lake Tribune for 25 years and was really Mr. Baseball in Salt Lake City. It was Mr. Derks who was offered the franchise when they decided to come back to baseball in 1939. Derks himself was a wonderful, wonderful old gentleman, and the kids playing ball out here reminds me of him. Little kids could come in the office on the Tribune, and Mr. Derks had time for them, which a lot of guys don't do that anymore. You don't find many sports editors or anybody in public eye that has time for little kids.
Salt Lake City has, for a number of years, fostered the game of baseball. In fact, our city would not be up to modern ideas did she not do so. In these times, baseball clubs are an imperative necessity. Salt Lake Daily Tribune, 1887.
The baseball team was lucky when they came back here, started baseball in 1939, because they didn't have a rainout that whole first year, which was lucky because they were a little short of money anyhow. But to show you how lucky they were, the night after the playoff, when they had the biggest crowd they'd ever had in the ballpark at that time, the ballpark burned down.
It was a real tragedy for those of us who had grown up in the Salt Lake City area to have Old Community Park burned down. It was the site of the old Pacific Coast League Salt Lake Bees of the Lefty Gomez, Tony Lazzari era, and all of a sudden it was gone. The fire was a devastating thing. Of course, it burned down the ballpark, but I think it really hurt people's feelings worse than it did the ballpark.
Now you have the terrible thing, it's the first week in September, the ballpark is burned down, you have to have another ballpark for April next year, so they start rushing building the concrete ballpark.
It was opening day of the season. And it seems that during the year previous or sometime, either Johnny Pesky, the shortstop for the Boston Red Sox, or Phil Rizzuto, the shortstop for the Yankees, had posed in that kind of a picture and had been flashed all over the country in newspapers and magazines. And so I was up, and I was the starting shortstop that year, so I was in that pose. Now, you know it's got to be a pose to have a picture like that. It'd be quite a play to make that kind of a play.
Derks Field, 1956. My home away from home. Well, I was a skinny, tall, right-handed pitcher just fresh out of spring training with the Phillies, and it was at that time C-ball. We went to. I drove clear across country from Philadelphia, my home, and arrived in Salt Lake City. Went to beautiful Derks Field.
Dallas Green, yes, I remember him very well. He was a big, tough pitcher. I mean, I can see now why he's a tough manager, because when Dallas got up at the throw, nobody dug in on him very much. You could kind of throw at the batters in those days, and Dallas wasn't above loosening a guy up if he thought he was digging in too much on him.
I led the league in wins, I led it in losses, I led it in strikeouts, and I led it in walks. I was 3-2 on everybody. We'd fight in a minute because I had a good fastball, didn't know where it was going. A lot of guys got knocked down, and as a result of that, we had a lot of fights.
I found him a very pleasant chap to work with. Of course, he was very young then, and we were all younger when he was here. He was a great pitcher, great competitor, and the kind of a guy we're glad to see go up to the big leagues and make it good.
We really spent a lot of time in Derks Field. All the guys really liked to come to the ballpark.
They all considered my mother and father to be their mother and father. At least once or twice during the season, they had Sunday dinner at our place, 2 at a time. My mother made brownies for almost every road trip, and so it was like a big family.
We eventually got with a family right there in Salt Lake City that really took great care of us, and a lot of the kids stayed with different families throughout the city.
It seemed like everyone who was anyone was at the ball game. It seemed like every night, including my parents. Baseball at that time sort of captured the imagination of the community. We were just average players, but we'd go downtown and we'd be treated like kings.
It was a big league ballpark for a minor league park at that time. Really well kept, well manicured, had fences all around it, pretty good lights for minor league baseball. So we thought we were big leaguers, and we acted like it.
One of the things we found out in economic development is that to get people to come here with businesses or expand existing businesses to create more jobs, the quality of life has become a very important part for a lot of people who are looking at these aspects. And having the Jazz here in a new facility is one thing. Having Ballet West, Utah Symphony, Utah Opera, major college football and basketball with BYU and the University of Utah, all these things play a role. And AAA baseball is also a lot more appealing to these people.
I just don't think it'll be the same. I think it might attract a new crowd if it becomes the place to be seen, like the Jazz. They draw a good crowd. It's not because they're all basketball fans, it's because it's the yuppie place to be seen. I think if the new team does well, they'll probably draw a crowd initially, but the diehard Trappers fans, I don't think will support the new team as well as they did the past one.
You know, everyone that ever played baseball at Derks Field commented on the beautiful turf, and it was wonderful. In fact, Pat Goggin was the parks commissioner then, in charge of the golf courses and the ballpark. Pat had a great idea one day. He said, if the fertilizer we use comes from chickens or from sheep or from pigs or from cows or from horses, why wouldn't elephant manure be a lot better, because they're so much bigger? So with that in mind, Pat had a couple of loads of elephant droppings from the zoo where we had Princess Alice taken down to Derks Field, and it was, for years, this pile stood behind a shed, and Lad Morgan, who was a groundkeeper, said it was as hard as a rock and nobody ever put it on the ballpark. But Pat was happy. He thought it was helping the grounds.
The Salt Lake Trappers have been a real phenomenon in minor league baseball. Minor league baseball has changed so dramatically over the years. When I was a kid and signed with the old San Francisco Seals, why, there must have been 50 or 60 minor leagues. And we started with D and then C and B and A, AA, AAA, and then the big leagues. And now, of course, they're just rookie leagues, A leagues and B, and then you get to the big leagues in a hurry. The Trappers, I think, have done a very good job of keeping baseball alive in the Salt Lake area. Salt Lake is a real city now. It used to be just kind of a town, but now it's a city.
As a rookie league team, the kids here would be able to go down with the players a lot more and become friends with them and talk with them.
I'm really going to miss John on the Idaho Falls team. He was a friend, and we would talk to him before the game.
Trappers played their last game in '92. Nobody knew it was their last game. It just came up real sudden, and it was just kind of, I didn't feel they treated the Trappers fairly either. You know, Trappers expected to play this season, and all of a sudden they were just kind of kicked out like an unwanted child, and I think that was a bad way to end the nice association they had.
There would be no baseball next year if there were baseball this year, and our contract calls for a new stadium for the new team to be in next year. Des Moines managed to build a new stadium over the winter last year, but they didn't touch their playing field. Their playing field remained exactly in place, and they built around it. Ours, as I mentioned earlier, because of the PBA requirements, because of the ADA requirements, we had to move our field farther to the southeast to comply with the disability requirements and with the new agreement in baseball for the requirements for the stadium itself.
The Trappers were good. We're a pretty good team, and I think I'm going to miss them.
You know, anytime you start building a ballpark, you're going to have controversy. Generally, a mayor doesn't get that involved. I would say mostly a mayor is a little more astute politician who sits back and lets the public make the decision, and then after the council and everybody else is kind of taking the ball, then the mayor steps forward and cuts a ribbon to dedicate the building. One thing about Dee Dee, I don't think is a baseball fan. In fact, I think she said one time down at the ballpark that she had only been in the ballpark one time, which hardly stamps her as a diehard fan who will come out there every night, rain or shine or snow or sleet or win or lose.
She's been to the two Trapper games this last year. She's not been a baseball fan until this started, but now she knows so much about baseball that she's going to be out there quite a bit, as a matter of fact, this next year.
She's usually called Queen Dee Dee around our house. It seems like she didn't really listen to the people of Salt Lake. They had some hearings, but they were mostly a farce. They weren't really listening to what the fans of the Trappers wanted.
You know, Dee Dee has been in more controversy than President Clinton. I'm a little bit worried because they are going to have to draw more people than they have been drawing in the past. And in the Coast League, they're going to have to get cash people in the seats. So you can put more seats in the building, but like somebody once said, it isn't the number of seats, it's the number of bottoms sitting in the seats that make the difference.
It was right in the center of town, kind of, and just fit in with the community. It was a big part of the entertainment part of the community. We had good crowds at that time. It was run very professional. It's really sad to see those old ballparks disappear from the game. There's no question about that.
It was a ballpark that was different than any ballpark in the country, probably, and I think all of us are going to miss it, the old-timers.
And I hope that those who are the architects in Salt Lake will keep some kind of a flavor of a ballpark and not make it look like some generic thing that just came out of a stamp machine. You just pull it and we got a new one.
The main thing I like about the stadium is that it's going to be very, very fan-friendly. It's got two decks, and the upper deck will be the closest deck to the playing field in the country. I mean, it's going to be a great spot to watch a ball game. The other thing is that there will be 12,000 fixed seats, but then there'll be a berm around the outfield fence, and that berm will begin about a foot below the top of the fence and go up about 14 feet, and people will be able to take blankets out there and watch the game out there. They could picnic out there.
Any political figure, a mayor, senator, governor, whatever, they've got to have something that when they're done that they have something to, show a mark of something that they did. I'm sure there are some people that think that it's a good thing to replace the old field with a new field. I don't really happen to think that's necessarily a good thing. I'm not in the construction business, and I don't really know how much things cost. I can't help but think that it would have cost less to remodel and repair and refurbish the old Derks Field.
I don't know who they'll name the new field after. Obviously, he's been gone since the war. People today say, who is John Derks? Who's the Derks that the field is named after? So obviously they won't name the new field after him, but I suppose somebody will give him $1 million and they'll name it after him, and then they'll wonder who that guy is.